And we're live now, Thursday of week 6, October 9th. We're doing things a little different this week. Like we said, on the Tuesday podcast, we went through all of our value picks for the week, and now we're going to take a look at the site's new optimal lineup creator for FanDuel, and we're going to give you guys some lineups based on those picks we made on Tuesday. Through Alex, our DraftKings guy. We're also going to get some help on the DraftKings side, so if you use either site, don't worry, we're going to have you covered. We've got Pete the Greek in tonight, as well as Alex and myself, so let's just kick it right off. To go back at our value picks here, we want to look at including certain picks in the optimizer. So I guess we'll start with FanDuel first, if that's okay with everybody. What position would we like to start off optimizing out of this? Do we want to say, what if people play Big Ben? What if people play Blake Bortles? What could the rest of their lineup look like?
Yeah.
Well, one thing I like to do, and maybe we can start here and then see where it takes us and branch out. I am a big proponent in FanDuel of really just spending all my money at the wide receiver spot. So maybe we could take a look at what some lineups may look like if you do that. You guys want to start there, maybe?
Okay, sounds good. So let's. If we spend all our money at the wide receiver spot, we're probably not spending it on our value picks.
Probably not, no.
on our other value picks, just not our wide receiver value picks.
So let's see what happens then if we choose some expensive receivers. Let's see if the optimizer pulls in our value picks for us.
Can we try Demaryius, Julio, and Brandon Marshall?
Right now I'm running with Demaryius, Julio, and Alshon. If you want to hear my whole lineup. I like Alshon actually a little better than Marshall. I think Marshall's still a little banged up. And Jeffrey, other than the 1 week where he was hampered by the hamstring, he's been money. He's been putting up 10 points plus a game. He's scored twice and getting a decent amount of catches.
So the optimizer only lets us take one receiver. So if we want to load up one receiver who's a lock, who's that? Actually, no, wait, I might have gotten it. Okay.
Well, we both said Demaryius and we both said Julio, so I'd go with
just put in DT and Julio, and then
all right,
we'll see if the optimizer likes Marshall or Jeffrey better.
So I click load, and it says unable to generate a valid lineup. Come on, man.
Of course.
Let's take Demaryius out and say we're just gonna load up Julio. Nope.
Julio.
Why does it not like me right now? We may have to just essentially start over here, and I'll edit this shit out because I can't believe it's not letting me do anything. It's unable to generate anything. This is
Kurt, you gotta fix it. Kurt.
Yeah.
I had the same problem last week. I was using Google Chrome and I couldn't get it to work.
I got it to work last week.
I got it to work at one point, but it's not working now. So cool. Okay. Well. Anyway, we'll move on then. We won't use the optimizer. That's too bad. We'll use it next time maybe.
Use the human optimizer.
Yes, we're going to use our brains to optimize. So let's instead look at FanDuel and DraftKings for now. Let's look at putting a lineup together, period. So I put one together on FanDuel earlier tonight. I love Matt Forte this week, and one of my tournament plays is to do anything I can to get him into that lineup. So I've got Forte as my running back. I went much cheaper at Ben Tate as my running back. So let me pull up these stats really quick right here. I just want to see the people that I passed up here. If I sort my sheet on the running backs, I got Ben Tate at 6,800. So around there, I could have gone Chris Johnson, Fred Jackson. Who else is here? Steven Jackson, Matt Asiata, James Starks, Justin Forsett, Andre Williams, 6,300. So I could save 500 and go Andre Williams. What do you guys think? Just looking at running backs so far in this lineup. Assuming I keep Forte because I love him, do you guys think Tate's the better play on those guys I mentioned thus far?
I do. The only player I see who's even in the range that I would like would be Lamar Miller at $6,900, $100 more. He's the only one who I see in that range who I would even consider, of equal value. Well, I take that back, actually. Joyke Bell, if we go down to 6,500, I think he's going to play. I think Bush is still a little banged up, and it's Minnesota. Need I say more? So, but yeah, I agree with you. I think I'd play Tate there.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think Tate had a great game against them in Week 1 against the Steelers. He's going up against this week. So I think with that said, let's move on from there and look at my quarterback. So I again, tournament play, I like to do a stack there. So I have Eli Manning and Ruben Randall. Let me tell you first why I went with Ruben. I went with him because Eli likes Randall in the red zone, in the end zone, and I feel like he's more consistently targeted in the red zone than Victor Cruz. So at $5,900 too, I mean that's a pretty darn good deal for me to be able to put a stack in there with a legitimate receiver who gets looks in the red zone, right? I think he scored last week, if I'm not mistaken, and he's $900 cheaper than Victor Cruz. So, Alex, do you agree with Randall here, or you think I should have gone more expensive with Cruz?
Well, my question would be, how much more or less is Odell Beckham Jr. now that he's back? That would be the interesting play, in my opinion, if you can save money on it, especially. Because we saw that once he got in that lineup, they used him, and they threw him. He got his touchdown. I know, Randall, you're right in saying that he's a red zone target. We saw him targeted multiple times in the end zone, not just the red zone, last week. So he's definitely a good play. But if you can save a little bit of money and go for Odell Beckham Jr. as your stack, I actually kind of like that a little more.
Pete, can you give us A, your thoughts on that, and B, the price of Odell Beckham Jr.?
Sure, I'll look up Beckham now. I think that's a very good point. The one thing, Beckham is at 6,000. What was Randall?
5,900.
Yeah, so
Randall.
basically equivalent. I think Randall. The one thing about Randall is he gets looks near the goal line, which is very critical for scoring in any fantasy format. He's had quite a few end zone targets. I think he was one of the receiving leaders in opportunity-adjusted touchdowns, which is very important. So yeah, I'd probably go Randall. And like you, I sometimes like to stack as well. That's why I'm trying to look at lineups. I'm actually looking at like a Cutler-Alshon lineup, something like that. But no, I think I'd probably play Randall cheaper over Beckham, and hope for the touchdowns.
Cool. So I'll continue with my receivers. So really, actually, I'm going to skip my two receivers for now. What I did was I kind of backed into my other receivers. I said, okay, let me find a defense that I think is serviceable and at a decent price. So I grabbed the Bucs. They're at home against Baltimore. Looked okay against New Orleans last week, and I think New Orleans has a better offense than Baltimore coming in. So I grabbed them at $4,600. Robbie Gould, $4,600. He's kicking at Atlanta in the Dome. Enough said. Delaney Walker is only $6,000 this week. So he's going up against Jacksonville at home. If Charlie Whitehurst is there, or Jake Locker, regardless, he gets pretty decent targets. So with those three guys, I backed into my other two receivers, and I snagged Julio, $9,000, and Welker at $6,800. And on top of this, I still have $100 remaining, so I could go higher or lower here. I could use that $1,000 to go, that $100 to go to Beckham, or if I bring up receivers around Welker. So Welker, like I said, $6,800 this week in FanDuel. If I can find him in my sheet here, I've Cruz, who I'm not going to go with two receivers from the Giants. I could go with Keenan Allen, Kendall Wright, Kelvin Benjamin.
Allen's a nice boom or bust play. I like Tate a lot. I'm trying to get him into my lineups, actually.
Do you, though? Like I get that he did really well last week against the Bills, but I don't know. With Calvin completely out, I don't know if I trust him this week.
Well, Minnesota's terrible. And, Tate's coming off back-to-back weeks of 100-plus receiving yards, 8 receptions and 7 receptions. I mean, I agree with your point on Calvin being gone. Do they focus on him? But I mean, who else are they going to throw to? And keep in mind, the Lions, they do still have some other weapons. They got both running backs coming out of the backfield, can catch passes. I think I'm okay with playing Tate. I'm trying to get him into quite a few lineups, actually.
Yeah, I agree with Pete. Tate, we've seen it in the past. Stafford locks in on that number one option that he has in the receiving game, and without Calvin, that guy's Golden Tate. We don't know what you're going to get from Ebron. You never know what you're going to get from those other tight ends or those secondary, third receiving options that they have. Tate's the guy that has been getting the ball a lot lately, and especially with Calvin Johnson limited. And we don't really know how healthy both Bush and Bell are. Obviously, Bell missed the game last week, and Bush left the game early last week, so we don't really know what their usage is going to be like. Golden Tate is, in my opinion, if you're going to go with anybody in the lines, he's the safest player you have.
So do you guys both like Tate over Welker?
That's a tough one because the Jets have been so bad, and Welker is another target monster. You have to elevate his value in these half-point PPR and full-point PPR formats. I have several lineups going. I'm trying to use all of the Denver receivers in one of them because I have a real good feeling that one of them is going to have a huge day. If it's just in a vacuum, I think I actually do like Tate over Welker. And here's why. They're both getting a high volume of targets. They're both getting a high volume of catches. But Tate's just getting looks farther down the field, and he's getting more yardage. And he's the more explosive player. They both have a good matchup, but I think if I had to pick two, I'd pick Tate.
Yeah, I kind of only lean towards Tate because coming from me, the Jets fan, that's going to be watching this Broncos-Jets massacre, it's going to be a massacre. Denver is going to destroy us. It's just, are they going to be up so early that they don't need to throw the ball anymore, and then you have to kind of guess who's going to get those touchdowns in the first three quarters when a game actually is within some sort of distance where they can still throw the ball and need to be effective. That's kind of why I really like Ronnie Hillman. I'll get to Ronnie Hillman later, but that's kind of why I really feel. What? I can't hear you.
Was that I don't think that ever really stops them though, right? Like, I mean, we can go all the way back to the first game last year when Peyton threw 6 or 7 TDs. I mean, they're up by 3 touchdowns and they're still throwing the ball, right? Same thing last week. They're up 3 or 4 touchdowns, they're still throwing the ball. I mean, I don't think that being up 3 touchdowns stops them from throwing the ball. Being up 6, maybe.
Yeah, that's the point that I'm trying to make. Where are we scoring points? Tell me where we're scoring points unless Decker's somehow back in the lineup and it opens up the offense a little bit.
If Decker doesn't play, your QB,
he get shut out again.
That's when you.
It's not out of the realm of possibility. And if they score 5 touchdowns and we have 0 points, they're gonna have to take their foot off the pedal a little bit because they know we can't score on them, and they're just gonna run the clock out because nobody wants to be on the field in a 35-0 game.
I don't know.
That's just my caution for Broncos this week is just that it could be really, really, really bad for the Jets.
Yeah, but on the other hand, it was pretty bad. It was pretty bad at home against Arizona this week, and all of the Broncos receivers still put up decent numbers. I mean, Demaryius blew everybody out of the water, but Sanders still had a very respectable day. Welker still caught 6 balls. And you know what? When they were up huge in the third and fourth quarter, they were still passing. So I hear you. I mean, you're absolutely right. You don't want to bank on a touchdown. But on the other hand, in order to get up big, they're also going to be scoring. So I don't know. I feel like, but if I have to pick between Tate and Welker, I agree with you. It's Tate. But I think Welker's a very reasonable play. I don't think it's beyond the realm of just you shouldn't use him. I think he's a very reasonable play.
No, definitely. This is one of those. It's more your preference on who you would rather play and who you feel better about. We can't tell you how to make a gut decision. If you like Welker better than Tate, go with Welker. If you like Tate better than Welker, go with Tate. That's one of those things where it could go either way on either of them. They're both in pretty good situations where they have the opportunity to accumulate targets and possibly get in the end zone. You can't really go wrong with either. It's more of who do you like better? Who do you think has the better matchup?
So
decide. We can't. Oh, you have to play Tate over Welker. It's one of those that's your call.
Right.
Here's my last tidbit that I can really think of right now. and you keep saying, oh, maybe it's going to be a blowout, it's going to get really bad. Someone has to get those points in order to make it really bad, right? And that's kind of what Pete was saying last week. Even though it was really bad, their starters still put up really good numbers. So in order for the score to be run up 5 touchdowns, someone has to score them. And I'm hoping, this week, obviously, if I keep this lineup, I'm hoping it's not Julius Thomas scoring every freaking touchdown.
Right,
So,
but that's the concern, is that Julius Thomas has eclipsed Welker as that guy that that Peyton is really looking for first in the red zone. He's that guy that he wants to throw him the ball, and so far Julius has converted on almost all of them, which is, I know Welker's only played 2 weeks, but Peyton. Peyton likes his consistency. He likes going with what works, and right now Julius Thomas is working. I don't see Welker more than a sneaky TD rather than, oh, he's a good bet to get in the end zone like he was last year.
he's always a sneaky TD.
Of course he's always a sneaky.
He's always that 5-yard out or dig route that gets in the end zone. He's never anything like more skilled than that. So
he's a little white boy.
Okay, so let's rehash then. My lineup for this tournament was Eli, Forte, Ben Tate, Ruben Randall, Wes Welker, Julio, Delaney, Gold, and the Tampa D. I like it. I think maybe the question mark could really be Welker. If I can find more value cheaper, maybe I do that and upgrade at, I don't know, the Tate or the Randall position. Maybe I end up going Cruz. But I think right now this lineup's pretty solid. So that's my lineup in a FanDuel view. Looking at the guys we mentioned earlier this week. Did we mention Ben Tate? I'm trying to find the value picks here.
Sorry, you just came back after Tate. I missed that whole thing when you were talking about your lineup.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I'm not. But Tate's great. Love Tate.
So we didn't touch on him, but that's okay. I think he's still a value this week. He's not that cheap, but he's $6,800. But I think I like him. So we've talked enough about FanDuel for now. Let's take a switch over. Alex, let's break down one of your lineups in DraftKings. Then we'll come back to Pete for one in FanDuel again.
Sure.
Would you like to start with tournament or 50-50? I got both ready.
Let's go tournament.
You want to stick? Let's stick with tournament. Okay, so obviously we've talked a lot about the difference in guys you want to play in a 50-50 versus a tournament. Me, I like to find certain players that I feel are being undervalued and kind of build different types of lineup based off of that. So in my tournament and my 50-50 lineups, there are going to be some similarities, but there are some differences. In tournaments, I love doing stacks because if you can get points from one person, you're going to get points from another person. That really, really works with quarterbacks to wide receivers and tight ends. So I always try, if I'm going to play a tournament, you have to get a stack in there at some point, and I usually like to do top-tier stacks. So my 50-50 lineup, my tournament lineup for this week, I'm rolling with Jay Cutler, Andre Ellington, LaShawn McCoy. I have both Alshon and Brandon Marshall because if Jay Cutler lights it up against Atlanta, both of them are going to have big games. And even if only one does, I have one of them in my lineup. Demaryius Thomas, Zach Ertz, Ronnie Hillman as my punt play in the flex, and then the Cardinals defense. So, like I said, with the stack, Jay Cutler's going to throw the ball a lot in Atlanta. Atlanta's at home. They're going to score plenty of points. Cutler's going to throw for plenty of yards, plenty of scores. This is going to be one of those huge, high-scoring games where both quarterbacks just absolutely tear it up. And I like what Tressman's saying about Marshall they want to get him more involved based on him not really being all that healthy yet, and they need to get him more in the game plan. And like Pete was saying earlier with Alshon, other than that week with the hammy, he has been great. He's been a great value in daily across both FanDuel and DraftKings. He's been a solid play week in and week out. So for a tournament play, it's the fact that Alshon and Marshall are both under the 6,500 mark that keeps me from instead going with like a Matt Ryan, Julio Jones stack, because I'm getting two guys that are essentially top 10 receivers for below 6,500 each and pairing them with their quarterback. that's insane value, especially in a tournament. That's one of those things that I like to do. Just I could wind up with 70+ points just from the three of them, and then the rest of my lineup can get me the rest of the points to get me higher scores. So also with LaShawn, we talked about him on Tuesday. At 6,000 for LaShawn McCoy, that's a joke. I'm putting in my lineup. That's not fair. That's DraftKings giving me money. The same with Ellington. We saw what Ellington did last week. If Palmer's back, we touched on this a lot with Ellington on Tuesday, but if Palmer's back, I like him even more, and even if Palmer doesn't play, he's still going to be involved. He's healthy. He's the guy that everybody wanted to draft at the end of the second round, the early third round in this year's fantasy drafts. So he's somebody that I see a lot of value in, somebody that's going to catch passes. He's going to get looks around the goal line, and he's a good bet to get in the touchdown and get a touchdown, and also maybe get 100 total yards. And that's somebody that you want to play for 5,100.
So let's hang on. Let's try to react here. Holy shit.
Sorry.
So looking what I want to touch on first, talking about LaShawn or Ellington, sorry. The Redskins are actually very good in fantasy-wise against running backs, right? So they've given up 100 yards twice this year to running backs. Once was against the Giants, which they got 150 yards, but it took them, they ran the ball 37 times, which is a lot, right? I don't see Ellington running the ball that much. I don't see the Cardinals running 37 times. The other was to Houston, where they ran 29 times for 105 yards. They've only given up one rush touchdown this year. I know.
Mark, you got some crazy robot voice going on.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, womp womp. I get what you're saying with Ellington, but as we've seen, it's not like they're not giving up those touchdowns to running backs. They're just not running the ball in. They're catching it, like we saw Marshawn Lynch the other night. He caught one of those touchdowns. I think earlier in the season we've seen other running backs, they catch the ball and get in the end zone. They're not necessarily running the ball, but Ellington is a guy that can catch and run and find his way into the end zone from almost anywhere on the field. We saw it last week with the 81-yard touchdown. We could see it also on one of those 5-yard little dump-offs, and he just makes a defender miss and gets in the end zone. So I'm not really looking for Ellington to necessarily get in the end zone through the ground. I'm just looking for him to get in the end zone.
And I can respect that. I do think it's a good tournament play, but I think there's risk there. For me personally, there's too much risk there to using a 50-50. So I like him in a tournament play, though. And then you mentioned the Falcons. You have both Alshon and Brandon Marshall in this lineup.
And Cutler.
So I get Cutler. But against receivers, so I like using the fantasy points against, right? I like using those stats from different sites to see how these defenses do against the different position players. And the only time that the Falcons gave up multiple touchdowns to receivers is last week against the Giants. And even then, they only gave up 160 reception yards. So I don't doubt that Alshon and Marshall can duplicate it, but I feel like the matchup isn't as juicy as a lot of people think. I think the juicier matchup is Forte against that defense, personally.
Yeah, but like I was saying, it's the fact that, well, the Falcons haven't faced a duo of receivers like they have in Marshall and Jeffrey, so that it's stats this early in the season. I don't like to get caught up in those opponent rank things as much as I would maybe later in the year, because we still don't really have all the data, and we're kind of it's almost like the data is making it more guesswork than anything.
And also keep in mind, sorry to interrupt you and cut you off, Green Bay has been very good against the fantasy wide receivers, and they gave it up to the Bears receivers. So you're absolutely right, Alex. You have to look at matchup and who they've played, and other than well, actually, I'm just looking at it. Okay, Cincinnati, the week that AJ Green got hurt and went out. So not a lot of points to fantasy receivers there. Tampa Bay, okay, it's Tampa Bay. Josh McCown was still starting.
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota does not have great receivers, and that was the week Teddy Bridgewater got his first start. and New Orleans. And New Orleans in that game actually had a big day out of Colston, but that was about it. So they haven't really played a top tier, what I would consider a top wide receiver tandem like the Bears are. So I'm not so sure that I would agree with you.
There is no top wide receiver.
Well, okay, but I could argue maybe like the Packers, Denver, right? There's a few on that level. I think the Bears have the two best fantasy receivers.
I agree.
But to the point, I think that in this case, looking at points against and not playing them for that reason, probably you can't do. Just because the Bears are a level above, and the Bears are a level above anything the Falcons have played.
Right, and going back to that, the reason that in this tournament that I'm stacking them up is because I too have to agree with you that Forte, if you're picking between the three, Forte is the guy that I would want to play more times than not. But the fact that I can play both Marshall and Jeffrey for under 13,000 in DraftKings, are you kidding me? Guys that could both put up on the same day 10 catches and over 100 yards with multiple scores. If I can get 20 catches for over 200 yards and at least 2 to 3 scores out of two guys that are only costing me 13,000, are you kidding me? It's not fair in my opinion that I have that opportunity to do that. There's no I get it. Marshall struggled and Jeffrey's price is down because of those injuries early in the year, but come on, DraftKings, you're making this too easy. This is the ultimate tournament play, and although I agree with you, Forte is the better bet to have the best game of the three, I can still save on the rest of my lineup by somehow save on the rest of my lineup by playing two of the top 10 receivers in all of football.
Okay, we'll move on. Who did you have at tight end?
Ertz. I didn't get there yet, but
okay,
I needed to save some money. I needed to save some money, so Ertz at 3,800.
And you have your man crush on him, so that's fine.
Other than Kelsey, Ertz is my tight end man crush. It's just, for me with Ertz, if he's that cheap, it essentially boils down to almost being nearly a punt play for a guy that can blow up and have a top 3 week. And especially in a tournament. I'm also playing him in the 50-50, but we'll get to that. But it's a punt play that has tremendous upside where you can still get that upside, but you have to spend more at the tight end position. But by me having Ertz in there with that upside, I was able to spend more money on guys like Shady and Marshall and Alshon and Cutler. And Demaryius Thomas.
Okay. So I voiced my opinion. I think overall, could you just recap your lineup again?
Yeah. Cutler, quarterback. LaShawn and Ellington as my running backs. I have Brandon Marshall, Alshon, and Demaryius Thomas. So basically I have 3 top 10 receivers. Like Pete was saying earlier, I do like stacking my wide receivers, especially in daily, because they have higher floors and they're more predictable in my opinion than running backs. Then I have Ertz at tight end. I have Ronnie Hillman as my punt play, high upside flex, and the Cardinals defense because I think they're just going to tear apart Kirk Cousins this week.
Okay.
They're pissed off at how bad they got beat by Peyton. They're going to come back with a fury this week.
And they're at home. So not bad. All right. So let's go to Pete then. Take us back to FanDuel. I don't know if you put together a 50-50 lineup or a tournament one.
I haven't done any 50-50s yet, but I've got a couple tournament lineups going that I'm tooling around with. So as I was talking about earlier, I really like to spend money on receiver. And the first tournament lineup that I went with, I tried to get Demaryius Thomas and Julio Jones in the lineup. So I started with those two. We've already talked about Demaryius, like all of the Denver receivers this week. I think one of them's going to have a big day. Hopefully it's DT coming off his 230-yard week or something insane. Julio, Chicago's bad. They're probably going to be finding guys off the street soon to play corner. In this lineup, what I did was I went a little cheap at my running back 2, and I went real cheap at tight end. I'm playing Owen Daniels at tight end. I think Tampa had a nice week last week, but look, they still can't defend the pass very well. And I think that Daniels, he gets receptions. He's a very nice, extremely cheap play who has a good chance to find the end zone and catch a few passes. We talked about Tuesday. Andre Williams. I love him this week. He's got a wonderful matchup against Philadelphia, and the Giants are a team that like to run.
So really quick, let me butt in.
Sure.
That play of Owen Daniels, I love it because you have 10. They gave up 10 catches to the tight end. The Bucks did to the Saints tight ends. I guess Graham and whoever filled in for him. To Heath Miller, they gave up 8 for 85 and a touchdown.
Yep.
They gave up 8 for 83 and a touchdown to Greg Olsen, to 9 for 79 to Jared Cook. The only week they had a decent game against the tight end was Atlanta, and I don't even know who their tight end is. I can't pronounce his last name.
Levine
Toilolo, yeah.
He caught 2 for 25. So in those other 4 games, I love it. Owen Daniels is a great play. I'm a big fan.
I think so too, and I think he's also somebody who people are going to forget about this week. You're not going to see him in a lot of lineups. That's another reason I'm using him in the tournament format. He's probably going to have a low percentage of usage in FanDuel lineups. So yeah, I've got Julio, Demarius, Owen Daniels. I'm saving myself some money. At running back, I'm rolling with Lamar Miller. I don't think Moreno plays any significant role this week. I think Green Bay can still be had on the ground. I think Miami has a good rushing attack, frankly. They're not bad. And he's going to get all the work. So if that game is going to be kept close at all, I think Miller's a good play at 6,900. Andre Williams, we already discussed Tuesday. I love him this week. Giants are a running team. He's going to get all the work. I don't care if he catches only 2 or 3 passes. I mean, if he gets in the end zone twice, I'm happy. My third wide receiver spot, I'm using Golden Tate. We've already discussed him. And at quarterback, I'm rolling with Eli. I mean, look, I think Philly versus New York on Sunday night is going to be real high scoring. I don't know if it's Beckham or Randall or Cruz who's going to get in the end zone, or Larry Donnell finally does something again after a 0-point outing last week. I don't care. As long as one of them get in, Eli has a nice day. And at 7,200, he's really cheap. On FanDuel, that's real low for a QB. So again, my lineup to recap top to bottom, I'm rolling Eli, Lamar Miller, Andre Williams, Julio, Demarius Thomas, Golden Tate, Owen Daniels nice and cheap at 5,300. My kicker is Sean Swisham, and my defense is the Lions. I love them against a rookie quarterback. Even though they're on the road, I think this is a low-scoring game. I think the Lions have a nice day.
So, Lamar Miller, why did you choose him over Noshawn?
Frankly, I don't think Noshawn's healthy enough yet. We don't have enough information that he's going to play. And even if he does, there's no real reason for Miami to rush him back into a heavy workload. I know he's real cheap. I just think Miller's the guy for one more week. I think he gets almost all the work, and I think he has a nice week. I mean, again, Green Bay can be had on the ground. And if they're going to keep it close at all, they have to have success running the football. So I think that's why I'm choosing Miller.
Yeah, and obviously with Noshawn coming back, like people are going
a lot of people are going to avoid him.
People are going to avoid Lamar Miller, but like you said, like it's almost too soon for Noshawn to be back in that lineup and back producing. The way Lamar Miller has been running the ball early on in the year since Moreno went out, there's no reason for them not to keep Noshawn healthy and just let him run and gash the Packers defense. Sorry, Mark, but they kind of are.
No, I mean, they're one of the worst rush defenses in the league, if not the worst, right? They were the worst heading into last week's game. So I'm not arguing playing a Dolphins running back at all. But I read earlier today that Noshawn practiced, I think, today and yesterday. So just a heads up, we keep an eye out on the injury report there, because Miller may not be he may not be the go-to guy there anymore once Noshawn comes back. I'm not saying Noshawn immediately takes over the number one role again, but they'll at least, I think, share the role going forward once he comes back healthy.
Right, but the important thing about this is that it's a tournament, and there has to be risk somewhere. You want to get those really, really top elite players in your lineup and then fill the rest of your team with risk-reward, because that's the only way you're going to win a tournament. You have to go with those guys that people are going to forget about, or people are going to be like, well, I don't know if he's playing. It doesn't matter. If you put him in your lineup and he succeeds, you're going to succeed. If you don't, you don't. It's a tournament. That's why you spend less money on tournaments, and you're not really as worried about it because everybody has to hit on your team for you to win that anyway. so you have to take chances. Otherwise, you're not going to win regardless.
Speaking of risk reward, that's a perfect segue into my second lineup. Anything else you guys wanted to comment on this one, or should we move on?
No, go ahead, man.
No, you're good. I like that.
All right.
lineup.
So this next lineup is huge risk reward, and I also did a trick with this lineup. I'm playing this lineup twice, but I'm making one small risk reward change between the two lineups. So the lineup is Russell Wilson at quarterback, playing at home, coming off a huge week. Love him again against Dallas, who still is not a strong defense. Wilson plays great at home. Forte, we've discussed him. I'm going to skip my running back 2 for now. Andre Brown.
Antonio Brown.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm looking at Andre Williams. Antonio Brown for Pittsburgh. Mohamed Sanu with A.J. Green almost certainly out. Golden Tate, we've already discussed him. Martellus Bennett. Love him at 5,900. He had one kind of down week, and he's cheap again. So I'm playing Bennett for sure. And by the way, last week, if you watched the game, Bennett should have had a bigger day. My kicker's Dan Carpenter. I'm playing the Seattle D at home. I think they have a nice week again. And my RB2, Storm Johnson, 4,800 bucks.
Love it.
Storm, I like Storm. You mentioned Martellus Bennett. I had a discussion with one of my buddies earlier. The Falcons are one of the best defenses against the tight end position, and that's one of the things they focused on last week was eliminating Donnell. And
took Donnell out 0 for 0.
Yeah, that's exactly what they did. So I'm just putting it out there. I understand you want to assume risk where possible, but against the tight end, the Falcons are actually trying to find their rank here. I mean, they're one of the best in the league, actually the best in the league.
We've actually talked about this too, and if you remember, it was a few weeks ago where I brought up the fact that the Bears move Bennett around. You know, they play him at receiver a lot.
He does play out of the slot quite a bit.
Right. So I think I'm a little wary of the matchup, but this is another case where I'm willing to assume risk because of what the Bears do with Bennett, because of his connection with Cutler. And look, you know, there's a big difference between Bennett and Donnell. I think about 3 inches, which is important near the goal line. So that's my reasoning there.
Yeah,
Right.
no, and to be fair, the one week they played Jimmy Graham, you know, he went for 9 for 82. Other than that, though, they haven't given up a touchdown to a tight end this year. So just putting it out there.
Time for that streak to end.
There you go. What better time than now?
Well, also just to add, like Pete was saying, he took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to jump in there, but the fact is that Bennett plays on 3 wide sets. He's not your prototypical tight end like a Larry Donnell or whoever was playing tight end for the Vikings when the Vikings played the Falcons.
Yeah, nobody good.
He's one of those guys that he's not just going to stay on the line and block and then try to get open for passes. He is a guy that is mainly a receiving threat. He's going to be put into completely different positions. Again, like I was touching on earlier with Alshon and Marshall, this is a different offense than most teams have, and he likes to get everybody involved. He has 3 big-time receiving options, including in addition to Forte on the ground and through the air. I don't really view that opponent rank working against a team like the Bears that does so many different things on offense than other teams do. Plus, it's a tournament. It's a risky play anyway.
So what I did for my second line, remember, as I said, this is something I like to do from week to week. So I'm playing essentially the same lineup. Wilson, Forte, Antonio Brown, Mohamed Sanu. I think he's a great play this week. Golden Tate, we've discussed him. Bennett. My kicker changed, Brandon McManus, whatever, no big deal. The reason I made that change at kicker is I saved myself $200 playing the Denver kicker, keeping Seattle defense, and I'm spending that extra $200 at the running back position. I'm changing out Storm Johnson, so I'm basically just switching one player, and I'm taking a different risk. I'm playing Jeremy Hill for Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati's going to have to run the ball a lot with A.J. Green out. Hill has been actually quite productive for as cheap as he is, and basically I'm just saying, okay, I like my lineup overall. What I'm doing is I'm just substituting one risk for another. So what do you guys think of that?
I like it because then your team is basically still reliant on those other players to do well, but it's just which risk does better because you need the rest of your team to do well anyway in a tournament. So it's one of those like if I miss on one of them, I have another chance to hit on the other, and that just doubles your chances of hitting big in a tournament. You could you could have a 0-point day from Storm Johnson, or you could have a 0-point day from Jeremy Hill, but you're increasing the chances that your lineup succeeds because you have those two major upside plays that are basically punts.
Yeah, I echo exactly what he said. I like it a lot.
So there's my tournament plays. So far, probably subject to change, but so far those are my 3 tournament plays this week.
That's good stuff. We've pretty much hit our time, so I think we're going to...
Wait, 50-50.
I do not have time for 50-50, but if anyone wants to discuss, I believe Alex and Pete are going through some Q&A afterwards. If anybody has any questions, hit up Alex on Twitter. He'll also be looking at some 50-50 lineups there. We'll temper things a little bit more next week. We'll hit, I guess, maybe one tournament lineup, 150-50 lineup in each league next week. We'll try for that on Thursday. So in saying that, thank you guys. Alex, Pete, enjoy your Q&A session afterwards. And for our viewers or listeners, we'll catch you guys next time.